The jihad is coming fast now, and Allah has promised doom. You can stand up to it with trust in God, or you can hide inside your room. They're taking over New York City, and the rest ain't far behind. What's to come will likely not be pretty, but keep the true God in mind. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. That was the opening, the cold opening for the famous and award-winning This Week in Jihad. We are here with the great David Wood. David, good morning.
Good morning, sir. Good morning. Good morning. It's a good day. It's a good day everywhere, especially in New York.
Yes, it is. We're both ex-New York City residents, and it's a grand day. I can see a bright future for the city ahead.
I have to say, better them than us, Robert. Glad we got out when we did.
Yes, indeed. You know, I just was reading, as a matter of fact, that the next mayor, Zohran Mamdani, when he was an assemblyman, introduced a bill to outlaw Zionist non-profit organizations, which would actually mean that New York City would be illegal in New York City to have a synagogue or pretty much any Jewish organization. And so New York City has a lot to look forward to in this regard.
Yeah, it's weird, but if you start, talking about Islamic charities and so on, all of a sudden the tune would change, Robert. The tune would change.
Yes, indeed. So Zohran Mamdani, I got his picture there. He is the next mayor of New York, the gentleman there in the black apron-like thing and lipstick, looks like.
Yep, and he's surrounded by Al-Zut, apparently.
Yeah, I thought this was kind of a wild picture, David. Apparently they say that this is from one of his rap videos.
I actually listened to like 30 seconds of one of them. It was pretty much the worst thing I'd ever heard in my entire life.
Well, I understand that it's just a lot of Jew hatred. Is that right?
No, I was listening to something that was him rapping about his grandma or something like that, and it's kind of sweet. It was just terrible. And I'm saying that you don't have to agree with me. You could be spouting complete insane nonsense or be a horrible person. I could recognize that you're making a great song. Like one of the guys from Pink Floyd. One of the guys from Pink Floyd is notorious anti-Semite. Just cannot stand Jews at all. He's still made some of the greatest songs of all time. I can acknowledge that. The soon to be mayor of New York, not so much. His music is garbage, Robert. Just like his ideas.
We may have to agree to disagree about Roger Waters, but I can tell you that I myself personally am a big fan of a song you can't find anywhere anymore. It's been completely banned from the internet, but it's a shame because I enjoyed playing it for years. First at Memory and then on YouTube. I would play it because I thought it was a banger. It was a great song. But unfortunately, it was a jihadi anthem. Dirty Kuffar, you remember that one?
No, I don't remember that.
It was sort of a reggae-ish jihadi anthem out of the UK, and it's from 20-some years ago. So they were saying and so Mr. Bush him a dirty kuffar, and Tony Blair him a dirty kuffar. Throw them in the fire, and it was just a great song. Except then they had the twin towers coming down, and they all start laughing. And it was just too much for the internet, so it's completely banned everywhere. But it was a great song. I got to hand it to the jihadis who did it if they're still alive, but they're probably long dead. In any case, I thought this was interesting also. Zohran Mamdani, there's a lot to be said about him. He most famously, he said he wanted to globalize the intifada, which has always been a word associated with violence against Jewish civilians. So that's going to be something interesting if he follows through on that and brings it into New York. But also this photo here. I had to pause over this photo because it reminded me of my old pal Ahmed Rehab of the Council on American Islamic Relations. And he is the Chicago care guy And this is a photo I took off his, actually, a friend of mine took off his website years ago and kindly gave it to me. And there's Ahmed, also shirtless, like Zohran Mamdani, also wearing lipstick.
Looks like he's role playing as one of those Baka Bazi kids.
Yeah, well, you gotta wonder, what is it with these guys? I mean, I don't have any photos like that. Do you have any photos like that? I mean, it's just incredible.
I do, but it was when I was making fun of Muhammad for dressing up in his child bride's nightie. But what's funny, Robert,
I
is
remember that.
yeah, what's funny is I made a video making fun of Muhammad, and the entire point I was trying to make is, if you saw me in a nightie, I would never hear the end of it. You would say, "This is why no one should ever listen to this guy. He's a lunatic." And then I read these passages about Muhammad, say he's in his wife's garments and so on. Right?
Yeah, it kind of seems to me these guys have read those passages about Muhammad too.
Yeah, but that's what was funny. Then Muslims would take screenshots of me in the nightie and say, "You see, this is why you should never listen to this." Like, how are you missing this? How are you not getting the point?
I've seen that as well. I thought, what are you crazy? Don't you know why he's dressed like that? But anyway, they were probably counting on the ignorance of their audience, as is so. I'm
gonna remake that video, but make it much more forceful.
Yeah, well, now you've got new material here. Anyway, a lot of people are saying Zohran Mamdani is not a jihadi; he's a communist. And he is an open Marxist. He seems to have praised as a model mayor, a Marxist mayor in India. And is there some incompatibility here between being a jihadi and a Marxist, David?
You've got a number of possibilities here, Robert. You got a number of possibilities. Because as far as I recall, when I looked him up the other day, he's actually a 12er Shia.
Yes,
right.
That's right.
So if you're a 12er Shia, who's your like ultimate supreme role model?
Well, besides Muhammad and Ali, Khomeini, what?
Yeah, that's right. The Iranian regime, right? They're 12er
Yeah.
Shias, right? Now, what did they do, Robert? Is it just me, or did they align themselves closely with the communists in Iran until they brought down the king, which there had been a king for 2,700 years in Iran, and the Muslims align with the communists. Hey, let's get rid of this guy so we can all establish a better Iran for the future. And they took over. And then what does the Ayatollah do? He kills all his leftist allies after using them to seize power. So if I'm looking at that, I'm saying, okay, well, the big idea is align as closely as possible with the far left until you seize power, and then you let the cat out of the bag. So that's one possibility. It's another possibility this guy's just that he's more aligned with the left, with the progressive left, and so on, and that being a Muslim in that fashion it just helps you, right? It gets you some cool points with them because then you're an oppressed victim and so on. So I don't know enough about the guy to know whether this is more of an Islamist plot or more of like a communist or socialist plot. Either way, I think New Yorkers are pretty screwed on this one.
Yeah. And
Either
I do
way.
have a couple more small details that Mamdani may indeed be just your garden variety socialist leftist that is dominant in the Democrat Party today, like AOC, who he was just appearing with, Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. But there are signs to the contrary, or signs that he's also a serious Muslim. Just two little small anecdotes. One is there's video that's out there, and of course I have it at Jihad Watch, of him speaking at a mosque, and he's criticizing Cuomo, who he was running against, of course. And he says, there's so many mosques in this city, and when has Cuomo ever visited any? And he's telling these people in the mosque that they should not vote for Cuomo because Cuomo had not visited any of the mosques, and he's standing in one. Now, that's just a small thing, but it makes it clear that certainly the Islamic community and its priorities are going to be on the radar for him as mayor. in a way that maybe they wouldn't have been if Andrew Cuomo had just resumed his whatever it is he does, his graft and corruption as mayor. And then there was another one where he was looking at a poll that said that he had only a 23% chance of winning. This was a little while ago. And since it said he just had a 23% chance of winning, he said gambling is haram. And I thought, oh, you know that. Oh, you care. Interesting.
Oh, it's interesting. All right, Robert.
Interesting times.
Yeah, you know what's interesting is because this guy's been posting for years and so on. And so it's funny that people keep asking him about this stuff that he's said or about these things that he's posted. And it's just, I have to give him credit. He's really, really good at just smiling and making it sound like it was nothing that he said, right? Like for the globalized, the intifada and so on. They ask him about that. And it's, intifada is just kind of an idea of progress that we all believe in. And as New Yorkers, I mean, we're really on board with progress and making a difference. And that's all. And that's how he'll be. And it's like that with everything. It's like, here's this really, really screwed up thing you said. Oh, but we all know that it's this. It's what you want to hear right now. It means this other thing that you want to hear right now. When I said that, it was back when you wanted to hear that. But now that things have changed, now it means this other thing that you like right now. It's really awesome. There was this, I forget where it was. Was it the Atlantic or something like that? But they said as far as his policies go, he clearly has no clue how reality works.
Yes.
I mean, they called it, I'm trying to think where it was. Was it the Atlantic? It was one of those. But it said, they called it magic. They called it something like magic politics or something like that. This idea of, hey, we're going to have grocery stores that keep the prices really low. And it's going to be free buses for everybody. It's going to be free childcare for everyone. It's like, this stuff doesn't appear by magic, right? When you say it's free, someone is actually paying for it. Someone has to actually pay for it. And so who's actually paying for what you mean is someone else is going to be paying for the stuff that people regularly pay for.
Yeah. Okay. And this is the problem with socialism. That the people who would be paying for it, that he thinks he's going to tax to oblivion to pay for all this, they're going to leave the city.
Exactly.
Katsimatides has already said he's going to close down Gristides. He's the grocery store tycoon. He's a billionaire. He's got all the grocery stores in New York. He's going to close them down. And so he's not going to pay for it. And this is what happens to socialist states. They become impoverished because everybody who can leaves. And so he's going to have to build a wall around the city, like the Berlin Wall, to keep the people in, so that he can tax them enough to pay for all this.
Robert, I understand you're not up to date on all the most relevant movies, but what you're supposed to say is build a wall around it like Escape from New York. And Escape from New York got so bad they just built a wall around the entire place and let it be a prison.
Yeah, that was what it was like when I lived there.
Yeah. So anyway, but yeah, so it's. Keep in mind, it's one thing if the entire United States of America raises taxes way up, and you say, if you're wealthy or something like this, you have a huge income, you look at it and say, okay, do I want to move to another country or am I just stuck here? And there would be people who would stay because they don't want to leave the United States. They're not citizens of other countries and so on. It can be extremely difficult if you're a businessman in the United States to get rid of everything, move to another country, get citizenship somewhere else, start your business. It's a ton of stuff. If you're talking about moving from one state to another, that's comparatively pretty easy. It could be difficult if you're actually okay, I'm going to sell all my stores or something like that. But the bottom line is, people will do that, right? People will do that. If New York City is going to raise my taxes massively to where I can't make a profit anymore, I'm going to go some other place where I can make a profit and a significantly better profit. And it's going to hurt right now, but in the long run, it's much better. So what happens in these situations, it happened in France. It happened in France recently, just a few years back, where they said, okay, we're gonna tax the rich. We're gonna tax the rich like crazy. What happened? The rich left. The rich took their money and they left. So anyway, what happens is you have the upper class, the middle class, and the lower class. And then you get your new socialist mayor in there, and he raises taxes on the upper class because they got to pay their fair share. And by their fair share, you mean they're going to pay for everyone else. What happens? The upper class leaves the city. We're not sitting here. We're not doing this. So they leave the city. Then you've got the middle class, right? But now they're the upper class. They're the new upper class. They're not making more money, but they're the new upper class because the real upper class, they left. So now you've got the middle class there. They're the new upper class. So they're the targets. We have to tax the crap out of these people. Well, the ones who can actually leave and go somewhere else, now they're going to go somewhere else where they can actually live lives where they're not paying for everyone else. And who's left? It's the poor people who can't leave, and then what do you do? Now, what's your source of revenue in the city? You taxed everyone until they got the heck out of your city. And now you have nothing. And then people eventually catch on, wow, we've completely destroyed our city. And all the wealthy people that we were taxing, who are paying for a ton of the stuff already, now they've left. And so they're not paying for this stuff anymore. Wow, we need to correct course and get a better leader. Too late. They're not coming back. They've left, and they're living it up in Florida. They're living it up in Florida or in Texas or someplace like that. They don't want to come back ever. And so you've just doomed your city forever. And then it just becomes this horrible hellscape. But at the very least, what you can say is it will be a shining example for people in the future about adopting insane, stupid policies.
This is true. Another thing about the new mayor, or the mayor to be, is that he's been accused of anti-Semitism, and after all, sponsoring a bill that would effectively close down all the synagogues in the city, calling to globalize the Intifada. It's very clear why people would accuse him of anti-Semitism. But when they did, he was asked about it. He started to choke up and talk about how he'd gotten death threats for being a Muslim, and was a victim of Islamophobia.
Mm-hmm. Smart. That's what I'd do if I were evil.
There you go. Yeah, he knows how to play the game, all right.
Hey, yeah, isn't that funny? Hey, what's up with this? This sounds pretty anti-Semitic. I know what it's like to be a victim here, so don't even tell me about what you feel like when you hear me saying this stuff, because I'm a victim of Islamophobia. Yeah, of course I'm going to be the next mayor of New York City, but I'm such a victim. I mean, you can't imagine what a victim I am. I came to this country 7 years ago, and now I'm about to be the mayor of New York City. What kind of evil, disgusting place is this? It's just the Islamophobia never ends. He's like Ilhan Omar 2.0.
Yes. He's also a total fake. That's another thing that's worth noting. This doesn't really have to do with being a jihadi, although I guess it might well, because after all, war is deceit, as Muhammad said. But there's an interesting video where he's asked about his accents, because
I saw that one.
You saw it. Yeah, he talks like an ordinary guy, an ordinary American, and then in other videos he's talks like an Indian because he's of Indian background, and he says, "Oh well, as an immigrant from Uganda, I learned to get along in all sorts of different contexts." But really, if an honest person pretty much sounds the same in whatever context he finds himself in. It's only a fake who changes the way he speaks depending on who he's with.
And it's funny because people made fun of other people for doing this in the past, like AOC when she'd go down south and howdy y'all, well look, we's here for a big old rally, aren't we? Yeehaw! And it's like, what who is that supposed to appeal to? You sound so fake. But yeah, so guys, that's exactly what this guy's like when he's talking on some just regular American talk show or something like this. Is like, so here we are, guys, and yes, we really want to move forward. And then he goes into a different context, and it's we're going to. And it's like, wait, what the heck just happened, right?
That's it.
And I haven't seen him in the mosque, but I bet in the mosque he's like, the streets will flow with the blood of the kuffar, and something like that.
Yes, indeed. All right, we're almost 20 minutes in. We got breaking news here that I was actually going to start off with, but You never know what's going to happen on This Week in Jihad. That's what makes
Totally
it
unpredictable.
the leading show on the internet today, ladies and gentlemen. Anyway, we got, this is Ahmad Akhtar. I believe that's his name. Let me make sure. Yeah, Ahmad Akhtar. That's Ammaad. Not Ahmad, but Ahmad. And I don't know if that's just somebody's misspelling or whatever. But in any case, from Stockton, California. And he was communicating online, as so often happens, with somebody he thought was a member of ISIS, who turned out to be a Fed. And he was plotting to send money and guns to ISIS. He also was helping ISIS plot to kill Jews. And he also works for the California Environmental Protection Agency.
That's good to know.
Yes. And so, you think about ethnic cleansing and ethnic cleansing in a jihad-related manner, then you can see why he'd be attracted to the EPA. So that's Ahmad Akhtar. Then also we have, where is this fella? I know I have him here somewhere. That is Ribvar Karimi. He's from Alabama.
Well, it actually looks tough. Most of the guys you post look like total dorks, but this guy actually looks like a.
This guy is actually, he's an Iranian government sniper.
Oh, nice.
Yes. So I expect he is tough. An Iranian army sniper. But he was arrested in rural Alabama, in Locust Fork, Alabama.
Did you say Locust Fork, Alabama?
That's right. That's what I said.
That is the most Alabama name I've ever heard for a place in Alabama.
Yeah, he was arrested in Locust Fork, Alabama, and he had an Islamic Republic of Iran army identification card on his person. He seems to have entered the country for the purpose of carrying out sniper activities for the Islamic Republic of Iran. Also arrested in Minnesota.
Well, hang on. Yes? Well, I mean, they had some plot. They shouldn't have sent in a guy who looks like a total jihadi. I'm just saying. Like pick a guy who doesn't look like he's about to kill you. Yes,
he does look like that. He probably fit right in Locust Fork, Alabama.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. He wouldn't stand out at all. Just
blend
in.
A lot of trouble.
Blend in like a chameleon. Where is he? Where is he? All I see are Alabamans here.
Howdy, y'all. Allahu Akbar.
Let us watch football game. And I don't mean our football. I mean American football. I am an Alabama native. I am not here for jihad. I am here just for watch football. American football.
All right. Yes. Also, we have in Minnesota the arrest of Mehran Makari Saheli, a former member of the Islamic Revolutionary Guards Corps, with admitted connections to Hezbollah. And so the sleeper cells, there has been talk since the conflict in Iran began and ended now, since we last had a show, the sleeper cells, there was talk of whether there would be a lot of Iranian jihad activity in the U.S. And so those two arrests seem to suggest that there was some plotting afoot. We shall see.
Well, Robert, all I can say is just give these guys a nuclear weapon and they'll be happy and leave us alone.
Yeah.
That's my plan. Hey, I don't know if you saw this, but I woke up a little while ago and went on social media, and what was trending was alligator Alcatraz. And I was like, what the heck is alligator Alcatraz? This. I only spent a couple seconds, but it looked like something with DeSantis came up, but it looks like they're going to build a big prison surrounded by alligators in Florida, and that it's going to be a place to house all the people that they're kicking out. So anyway, the point is, all these Iranian jihadis who are here for some reason might end up in alligator Alcatraz. So that'd be kind of cool.
That would be interesting. Can you see it? Ribvar Karimi versus Alligator Alcatraz.
If anyone could take on an alligator, it's this guy. He's
Yep.
pretty intimidating looking.
It'd be interesting. It'd be a great
So
movie.
you can do it, dude. You can do it. Face the alligators. Face the
Yep.
alligators. Show us your Iranian strength.
I think the alligator's already running. There were look here, yeah, there were 14 alligators watching the show and they've all left. When I put up the picture, so you never know. All right, this is Jonathan Brown. You know our friend Jonathan Brown.
Yay, it's him.
Yeah, the Georgetown University professor. He's a convert to Islam, and he's bad news. You do know Jonathan, right?
Not personally. I know who he is, of course. I've got a couple books by him.
Yeah, he's a nasty piece of work. He has written a justification for Islamic sex slavery of infidel women, and he is the son-in-law of Sami al-Arian, who was deported for his activities in leadership of Palestinian Islamic Jihad. He's actually married to Layla Arian, the daughter of Sami. He does not think slavery is a moral evil. He's tried to justify it, saying, well, you know, we're all enslaved in a certain sense. And now, at the instigation of hostilities between the U.S. and the Islamic Republic of Iran, he has said that he hopes that there would be a symbolic strike by the Islamic Republic of Iran against a U.S. military base. And I think, where does this guy live? He doesn't live in Tehran. He lives in Washington, D.C. He's a professor at Georgetown University, and he wants to see a strike by Iran on a U.S. military base.
Well, it's interesting because he's saying the exact same thing I said, that this is what they have to do. But I wasn't saying you should do it or I hope to see it. I was just saying this is what Iran has to do. Iran's in this difficult position. The leaders are in this difficult position of it's not a good position to be in if you don't look strong. You have to look strong, or because the only support the Iranian leaders have right now is from the radical 12er Shias, right? The rest of the population hates them. The only support they have is from the radical 12er Shia wing. So you have to keep those guys happy, which is why they can never compromise on things like the hijab or something like that. The government can't compromise on that, or you lose the support of the hardliners, who are the only people who are supporting you. So you have to be tough. That's pretty hard to do when the United States and Israel bomb the crap out of you, take out a bunch of your leaders and so on, take out your nuclear plans. So what do you do here? You have to seem like you're being strong, but you can't really do anything, or the United States and Israel are just going to crush you. So you have to do something where you say, ha ha, look, I did something. You see, now they're running from me, which is kind of exactly like what they did. Didn't they launch some rockets at a U.S. base, but they notified them ahead of time, guys, we got some rockets coming over there. So, you just shoot them down real quick, but then we can run away saying, hey, we fired rockets and they surrendered.
Yeah, they arranged it they hit Al Udeid base in Qatar, and they arranged it with the Qatari government to start with, that they would not hit any areas that were full of people. So it really was the symbolic strike that Jonathan Brown was talking about. But this is another guy, another professor in the United States. This is David Yagubian, who from the looks of his name must be an Armenian Christian, or at least of Armenian Christian descent. And he is a professor at California State University. And he says that the Islamic Republic of Iran must build nukes to protect itself against this murderous, sociopathic, Zio-American global empire.
Good point.
And I just think, I don't understand. This clown lives in California, which is still nominally part of the United States. What does he think is going to happen to his comfortable life if Iran nukes the United States? I mean, I know we're not talking really about Iran nuking the United States proper, although even that is not outside the realm of possibility in terms of somebody coming over here with a dirty bomb or something. But he's all for it, and of course he's he and Jonathan Brown are not the only ones either. This is, where is she? That is, oh, I love her name. That is Hell Yeah Dutagi. And that's her name, Hell Yeah.
That's her actual name.
Helyeh, Hell Yeah.
I mean,
But
she
it's
could
more
have a
fun just
pretty.
to call her Hell Yeah.
She could have a pretty. She could have a pretty funny intro to like a podcast or something.
Yep.
Welcome to Hell Yeah Podcast. And,
With Hell Yeah
roll with it.
Dutagi.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, she was actually recently fired from Yale University over her ties to a jihad terror network.
Bunch of bigots. Bunch of
she has
racists.
called for targeting all the U.S. military bases in the Middle East. And so I think, well, hell yeah, she's still in the United States, as far as I know. A Yale professor. I don't understand these people. Why are they here? I mean, I know why they're here. They're here to bring the place down. They're here because Allah promises great rewards to those who emigrate for the sake of Allah. Still, you gotta wonder.
I mean, that's what you're wondering. I'm wondering why they would fire her. I mean, seems to be right in line with what the Ivy League schools are all promoting nowadays. And in fact, it should have been like this. Hey, who's going to guide us into the future of our university? I know. Hell yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what the deal is with that. It would seem like she's completely in line with the way the universities are these days, but nonetheless, she seems to have gotten the boot from Yale. All right, the other big story, David, is over, of course, in Syria. Terrible story last Sunday at Mar Elias Church Greek Orthodox Church in Duela, a village on the outskirts of Damascus. A jihadi went in, opened fire, and he killed over 20 people, wounded 68, detonated a suicide bomb after opening fire. And so what I think is one of the most remarkable things, David, about this story is that the Christians marched in Damascus after it happened. And look at them, they're holding crosses. Now, why is that remarkable?
Well, let's just say the sorts of Muslims that are in control now in Syria, they know likey crosses.
Yes. The Islamic law forbids Christians to display the cross or to make any public show of their religion. And so the Christians in Syria, after suffering this mass murder jihad attack in a church, they marched through Damascus chanting, "Christ is risen, indeed he is risen. Raise your crosses, we do not fear your death threats." Now, man, that is the kind of spirit I think we need more of among Christians. There's all too much cowardice and accommodation of evil, and the idea that we just need to talk it out or have dialogue with them, and then that'll solve all the problems. These Christians in Syria know what's up.
Yeah, it would just be nice to see that sort of courage in the rest of the world and not in the place where jihadis are going to most likely keep killing them.
Yes. And in the same vein, this is another photo from the church. And this is a terrible photo of the aftermath of the killings. And there's blood. You can see blood on the wall, blood on the sacred icons. And the one on the left there, that is St. John of Damascus.
Whoa!
Yes.
I want that one.
Yeah, I understand. Me too. And St. John of Damascus, for those of you who may not know, is one of the earliest, actually I think the earliest Christian critic of Islam. And he wrote early in the 700s. It's clear actually from the standpoint of the fact that all this Islamic material has no historical basis, that by the early 700s, John is writing about Muhammad and Islam in a way that we don't see in the 600s, but he writes about the Quran in a way that makes it clear that the Quran is not in the form that we have it today. But John of Damascus does say some things that I think it's interesting to compare them to modern sensibilities, David. For example, he says, they accuse us of being idolaters because we venerate the cross, which they abominate. And we answer them, how is it then that you rub yourselves against a stone in your Kaaba and kiss and embrace it? And I thought, rub yourselves against the stone. That's like these videos that have just been circulating in the last few years of people doing that. And,
some things never change, Robert.
Yeah, it's wild. And he says, this Muhammad wrote many ridiculous books, to each one of which he set a title. For example, there's one book on women, in which he plainly makes legal provision for taking 4 wives, and if it be possible, 1,000 concubines, as many as one can maintain, besides the 4 wives. And I think, Muhammad wrote ridiculous books? What would church leaders say if they heard him say that today?
You'd be excommunicated, Robert.
Yeah. You know, there are precedents in recent memory. And so I think we need a little recovery of the spirit of St. John of Damascus in the church.
Oh, yeah. It's also interesting. He's our earliest reference to the interpretation of 4:157, that it's denying Jesus was crucified. And he makes fun of Islam for saying that Jesus was never crucified. And then, of course, you have later commentaries, and they're saying that Jesus was never crucified, but they all give they're clearly making it up. They're clearly making up the explanations for what happened. Like, you go to one source and it's Jesus is asking for volunteers. Who's going to take my place? And you go to others and Allah disguises someone else. So you have the Judas version. You have one of Jesus' disciples volunteers to be replaced. Then you have another where it's a Roman soldier who's disguised by Allah. And it's clear the later commentators are just making it up to come up with some plausible story for what happened. But our earliest reference for this substitution is John of Damascus. So it's actually debated whether that is what the Quran is teaching, because people point out 355, if you just read it in the Arabic, sounds like Jesus did die. And so there's a question whether Muslims have always understood that the Quran is advocating substitution theory, that Allah miraculously disguised someone else and made him look like Jesus and so on. There's a question of whether that's what the text is actually saying, and Muslims have always known this, or that John of Damascus brings this up in kind of an atmosphere of ignorance where Muslims haven't been thinking about it. He's like, you dummies think that Jesus wasn't crucified. And then they were kind of forced to defend this position because he's attacking them. He's attacking them with it. And so then they come up with all these explanations for for what actually happened. But anyway, yeah, definitely we need another 10 of those guys right now.
You know, David, way back in prehistory, in like 1983 or thereabouts, that was the first major paper I wrote about Islam. Man, I wish I had a copy of it today, but it was about 4:157 and about the Muslim explanations for what happened instead of Jesus being crucified. And I showed that the idea that Judas in particular was the one who took the place of Jesus on the cross comes from Gnostic writings. Because in the Gnostic Christian Gospels, Thomas, called the twin, is named Judas Thomas, and he's identified as the twin of Jesus. The Gospels, the canonical Gospels, actually never say who he's the twin of. And so the Gnostic Gospels go ahead and say he's the twin of Jesus, and they call him Judas Thomas. And so some of the Gnostic Gospels, or at least one, the second treatise of the great Seth, it actually says that it was Judas Thomas, that is Thomas the Apostle, who was on the cross instead of Jesus. And the Muslims picked that up, but they confused the Judases and figured it was Iscariot who was on the cross instead of Jesus. But the whole idea of Jesus not being on the cross and only seeming to be is a Gnostic Christian idea, because the Gnostics said that the physical body is evil. And so the Savior of the world could not have had a physical body. He was just a phantom. And so he couldn't have been crucified because he didn't have a real body. So they crucified Judas Thomas while Jesus is up above in heaven laughing at them. That's the Gnostic Gospels. And the Islamic tradition, as is so often the case, picked up a garbled version of this. Anyway, I was a young man when I was doing all that, David. It's long before you were born.
Yeah, it would be cool to have that paper from 1983. And it would be cool if I had one of my papers from 1983. It would have been more like coloring books, but...
Yeah, I even remember throwing it out and thinking, well, I'm never going to need this. And little did I know. Anyway, all right. Also in Syria, we have, what's his name? Abu Dujana al-Turkestani. Where is he? I got him here. Abu Dujana at-Turkestani. There he is. I don't know if the backwards hat is really classic jihadi gear. He looks more like Jake Brancatella to me, but anyway.
Looks like one of those Duck Dynasty dudes.
Yeah, that's right. But he made a video. He's a senior Syrian army commander. And he said, either you submit, he says to the Christians in the wake of the bombing of Mar Elias Church, either you submit or you will be subjected to the jizya or you will face war. Otherwise, by Allah, I have brought you men who love death.
That's weird. Where on earth did he get those ideas?
Yeah, I've never heard those things before. Anyway, those things, for those of you who may not know, he's dealing with chapter 9, verse 29 of the Quran, which tells Muslims to wage war against the people of the book, that is Jews and Christians, until they submit, pay the jizya. And the men who bring you men who love death, that's a classic jihadi trope, going back to many stories of the jihadis fighting with Muhammad. Also, David, let's hope that, hope and pray this does not come to pass, but the jihadis in Syria have promised more. Let's see. That's not it. There it is. This is this was something that went out on Jihad pages online, linked to Ahmed al-Shara, the president of Syria, who says he's given up jihad. That says, you pork eaters, wait for next Sunday. Hama Governorate, June 29th, 2025. That is indeed next Sunday. And then it lists Church of the Annunciation, Hama. Hagia Sophia Church, Skelbia. Mar Elias Church, Kafrbo. Dormition Church, Maharde. And Monastery of Saint, well, the saint's not listed, Baham. Anyway, they're saying they're going to carry out jihad massacres, coordinated jihad massacres at these churches next Sunday.
I saw that. I've seen that warning as well. Yes, we shall see.
Indeed. All right.
We're talking about the Iranian leaders being in a difficult spot where they have to do something to react to what just happened. But if they really do something in response to what just happened, more of that stuff is going to happen, which they don't want. So they're just kind of screwed either way. And so they have to do this pathetic little show and so on. The Syrian leaders are in a different spot, but also difficult. They're simultaneously trying to be the Sunni Muslim jihadis that they are, in which case they should be crushing Christians and demanding jizya or wiping them out and things like that, but also trying to convey to the world that they're going to be a modern, friendly nation and so on. And it kind of doesn't go well together. So you're going to see this. going to be locked into this situation for a while where the jihadis among them are going and killing Christians, and then the government has to go, oh yeah, we condemn this. Well, we're going to protect the Christians, and it's going to be pretty messy.
Yes,
ugly.
I'm afraid
It's
so.
gonna be
It
an ugly
doesn't look
situation.
good. And, well, speaking of ugly situations, let's go to Britain. And we have in Britain, it looks as if nothing whatsoever has changed. You know, a few months ago, Elon Musk drew attention to the rape gang phenomenon, and there was a big controversy about it in Britain, calls for a national inquiry. The parliament decisively voted against a new national inquiry, but finally it bowed to public pressure just recently and agreed to hold a national inquiry into the Muslim rape gangs. But meanwhile, there was an independent report, and it said that the ethnicity of the rapists was largely covered up, but it didn't say a word about their religion. And so it seems to me the same old denial and willful ignorance is going on. Meanwhile, we have more of the same, David. It's just incredible to me that this is still going on all these years later and after so much has come out. But a rape charge against a man staying in an asylum hotel, Mohammed Akbari, was kept quiet because officials were afraid of inflaming community tension.
Can you imagine this, Robert? You could have one of these guys just it wouldn't have to be rape. They could just go, they could rape and kill a bunch of little girls right now and so on. And the first response of the government would be, how do we keep people from knowing this so that it doesn't inflame tensions?
Yep. That's where we are. That's what Britain is doing. Meanwhile, in Germany, Germany's national soccer team has banned pork for the players, because they don't want to offend the Muslims who are on the team. Now, I've been in Germany a couple times. Those people eat a lot of pork. They like their pork. But
they like their Schwein.
Yeah. But Germany's changing. A new Germany is emerging.
And by the way, Robert, isn't it interesting? Because you have tons of Hindus who move to Western nations. You don't see everyone suddenly needs to become vegetarians so as not to offend Hindus who are vegetarians, because there are lots of Hindus who are vegetarians. You don't see some Hindus eat like chicken and stuff like that, but not beef and so on. You don't see, oh, we need to stop eating beef because it's offensive to Hindus who have reverence for cows and so on. Mm-hmm. Or really any other group except for one. And it just happens to be the ones who have the most obvious false prophet in history, and we're all supposed to bow down in honor of the most obvious false prophet in history. Pretty crazy.
And notice the same thing a few years back in Europe when Christmas pageants were getting banned in schools all over the place. And invariably they would say, well, there are people here who are not Christians, Jews and others. And the thing about that is that Jews have been in Europe for centuries. And the Europeans had Christmas pageants. And the Jews never complained. Only now are they suddenly afraid. And I think they're just naming the Jews because they know they don't want to name the Muslims. Because then people will say, oh, you're afraid, and so on, which of course they are.
Yeah, well, it's weird. It's other groups in general, like Jews are okay. Well, our religion teaches us not to eat this. If you don't believe in our religion, why would you follow that law, right? They understand that. If a Muslim, no, you must all follow everything, or we'll whine and complain that we're the victims here, and you'll change your behavior because you're stupid.
Yeah, and it works.
It works.
All right. I got a good one for you here from Canada. An Iranian whose refugee claim was turned down in Canada because he was convicted in England 16 years ago of a serious assault that left one person dead and another two injured, will get another shot at arguing he should be allowed to stay here because his bisexuality Kurdish ethnicity, conversion from Islam to Christianity, and identity as a Westerner will all put him at risk back home. Sarah Lotfi is he is. I just don't understand this case, David. He's a refugee in Canada 16 years after he kills a guy in Britain. Where's he been for those 16 years? And now he's saying that he can't go back because he's a Christian, but also because his bisexuality would bother the Iranians. I don't know. I think these people are nuts.
No, they are. And so one, keep in mind that this guy might be, it sounds weird, but he might be speaking truthfully. Okay. But it's also like people know what to say that works with government officials, and they say it, right? What could I say to a government official who's going to talking about deporting me back to a Muslim country? I'll say, hey, I'm gay, I'm bisexual, I'm LGBT, I'm a convert to Christianity. They know exactly what to say. And it's just
the gay part is going to get them a lot farther in Canada nowadays.
Yeah, they wouldn't care about the Christian part. Yeah, they wouldn't care about that. They'll send a Christian back in a heartbeat. They do not care. But it's this messed up situation where it's like, at some point, you have to think of like the bigger picture. And if you just said, hey, if you're committing crimes or violent crimes or something like that, we're sending you back, and we don't care. We don't care what your sexual orientation is or anything. You're committing a violent crime. We're sending you back to where you come. You're a refugee. Okay. You didn't come here and say, hey, I want to commit violent crimes. So if you did, we're sending you back. And guess what? A lot of these guys would stop committing violent crimes because right now they're convinced they can get away with it because you're stupid. Right. In other words, they're looking at this going, watch, you know what I can do? I can walk around and kill 10 people and then go molest like 15 little girls. And these guys won't send me back because they'll go, hey, guys, I'm gay. Don't send me back. And they'll go, oh, we can't send you back. It's amazing.
It is. All right. You want more amazing? I got more amazing, David. Let me find him. Here he is. That is... I had him here. Oh, there he is. The Catholic Bishop, Stephen Dami Mamza, of Nigeria's Catholic Diocese of Yola. You only live always. Yola. Anyway, he has built a mosque for displaced Muslims in Nigeria as part of his efforts to foster interfaith dialogue and peaceful coexistence. He built a mosque, a Catholic bishop. He built a mosque, David.
Well, what am I supposed to say? No, it's Robert. It's something. It's just you would expect people in Nigeria. It's one thing for people in the United States who've heard all their lives, every grade since kindergarten, that Islam's a religion of peace and tolerance. Every time they've seen the news, every time they've heard from anyone, it's all been Islam's a religion of peace and tolerance. It makes sense for people here to go, hey, you know what? We've got a few radicals. It must just be because they feel disrespected by us. So let's go ahead and do something nice, and then their hearts will melt, and then they'll love us again. Makes sense for people who know absolutely nothing. You'd expect Nigerians to know better because, that is like the main spot in the world. I think there are more Christians being killed for their faith in Nigeria than in like the rest of the world combined. I think I saw that a while back.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. It's because they're in that difficult situation. They're probably willing to keep trying this stuff. It's like, we know it's not going to work, but they just keep trying. Like, okay, well, these guys are killing Christians or killing Christians or killing Christians. I know, let me build them a mosque, and that might help them. You can understand where the guy's coming from. Hey, maybe if we're just like really nice to them, they'll stop slaughtering us. And you'd think they get the point, but even they don't, apparently, because guess what? From an Islamic mindset, yeah, Dimmy, you're supposed to be building our stuff and doing what we tell you to do. You're supposed to be serving us. You're supposed to be serving our religion. Good job.
Well,
Good
you know what he
job.
got? That's not the reaction he got. He says this: I was persecuted. Some Christians were upset that I had built a mosque, saying it was inappropriate. But what shocked me more was that some Muslims said a Christian should not build a mosque. That hurt me more than the criticism from Christians.
Can't win, man. Can't win, I guess.
Do you
So
think
Christians
that the
didn't like it, Muslims didn't like it?
the situation here, I should perhaps explain, is that he was running a camp for displaced persons who were fleeing from Boko Haram, the Jihad group. And he realized, he built a church for the Christians, and he realized that he had a lot of Muslims in his camp, so he built a mosque for them. And he says, I did it from the bottom of my heart, with pure intentions. The people who benefited from the gesture, the displaced, the victims of insurgency, were happy. And that's what matters.
If you're talking about groups like Boko Haram, oh yeah, they wouldn't like anyone doing anything to help people who are fleeing from them, because they don't want there to be anywhere to flee. It's a weird parallel to like what we're talking about with New York City. You can do something to someone. If they have a place to go. They're going to get out of there. So what do you want? California tried to do this a little while back. They said, because everyone started leaving California because of their policies, and then they tried to make it a rule where even if you leave, you still have to pay taxes to California. They're going to make that a law. Even if you leave, you still have to pay taxes to California. They don't want people to be able to leave. They don't want people to have anywhere to flee.
So the Eagles were right all along.
Which part?
You can
Hotel
check
California?
out of the Hotel California,
Yeah.
but you can never leave.
Yeah. I'm talking about like the jihadis and so on. It's you want people to be crushed into submitting to you, but if you're doing that, they can't have a place where they can flee to, or they're going to flee to that. So you don't want them to have an escape plan.
Now, a bishop, David, is supposed to be the overseer, the shepherd of the flock. He's supposed to be taking care of the spiritual welfare of the Christians that are under his charge. He's supposed to be, in other words, preaching the gospel and defending the gospel. Now, the Quran says that unbelievers are those who say Allah is the Messiah, Jesus the Son of Mary. It says that those who say Jesus is the Son of God are accursed of Allah. It says many other things, that Jesus was not crucified, as we were talking about before. Should a Christian bishop, really be encouraging the dissemination of teachings of that kind?
I wouldn't. I mean, I understand the spot that the guy's in. If he's saying, hey, everyone who's in a bad spot, flee here. And, we got not only Christians, we got some Muslims and so on. But seriously, it should kind of be, hey, if you guys want to have a mosque, go build one. Mm-hmm. Go make one. It's weird to take part in it.
Do you think that if there were a similar situation where Christians and Muslims were displaced and were in a camp that was run by a Muslim, would the Muslim build a church for the Christians?
Oh yeah, they'd build the next Hagia Sophia, and then once Christians started using it, they would just take it.
Yeah. Seriously, I don't think they would do that. I don't know that there's ever been in history a case of Muslims building a church for Christians, or being solicitous of Christians, or having outreach to Christians that wasn't just dawah. Never has happened. All right, a lot of other stories here, David. So many big stories these days. Let's see. Interesting case in ongoing situation, rather, in Germany, in Hamburg. In Hamburg schools, Muslims are putting pressure on and harassing their non-Muslim classmates. Girls being bullied for dressing not dressing femininely and not wearing a headscarf. Others have been called pig eaters. There it is again. This is like pork eater week. If there weren't so much breaking news, I would make that the title. But anyway, and then one of the people quoted in the article says, this is happening not just in Hamburg, but all over Germany.
It's pretty crazy too. Like they'll toss out the insults in an environment where people are trained never to be mean.
Mhm.
And it's like that is that is so easy to get them back down on insults. Just every time they say anything, say call them pedophile worshipers, and guess what? They'll stop real quick. Like shut up, you pedophile worshiping. They'll stop.
Yeah, I remember. Wasn't it AP was debating Hakikaju, and Hakikaju kept calling him Apis, and every time he did, AP said, I forget what it was. Do you remember? He's going to call Muhammad something.
Mopus. Yeah.
Yeah, so Hakikaju stopped doing it.
Yeah, I had that I've had that in actual like debates where a Muslim just randomly tosses out an insult, a personal insult, and I go, oh, okay, fine. See, I was going with the name calling and stuff like that, but fine. From now on, for the rest of this debate, I'll refer to Muhammad as a child molesting, murdering rapist. And they've had whoa, and they apologized. And it's like that's all it takes. What is that? It's we will insult you until you're going to insult our religion in return, and then we'll back away. Guess what? That's straight out of the Quran. That's Surah 6, verse 108. That if they're going, that Muslims spent years insulting the gods of the polytheists. And they kept doing this, kept mocking their gods, insulting their gods. And they're like trying to come to agreements and stuff. Hey, look, if we offer you this, can you stop making fun of our gods? They're trying everything they can. Finally, it's just, you know what? Because guess what? They believed in Allah too. They also believed in Allah. But finally they said, you know what? We also believe in Allah, but we're going to start making fun of Allah if you guys do not stop this. And guess what? That's when the revelation came. Oh, if they're going to insult Allah, then yeah, stop insulting them. And then so they had to stop with the insults. And it's like, so it's built into the religion. It's literally built into the religion. Keep insulting other people's beliefs until they start insulting your religion in return. Then stop.
Yep.
And you still have, it's just built into Westerners. Don't ever insult in response. It is, gosh, stupid.
It's true. Okay, one last before we go to super chats. This is this is a church in France, in Ambazac, a small town in the north, and excuse me, the guy last week, a Muslim came in to the church, and he said to the people there, "If you move, you're dead." And he started denouncing the church's support for the Israelis, which of course they don't have any support for the Israelis, but that's what this guy said. And he said that the leaders of the church were pedophiles, which is kind of ironic. And he said, "We will kill you all one day." Hussein O, he's been identified as. So that's France today. All right, anyway, there's plenty more jihad, but this is a program that does not go on forever. The jihad does, but we don't. Okay. MO says, do you guys work with churches to warn Christians against Islam? How hard is it? Why do churches ignore it? I'd be happy. I've spoken at churches before. It's actually been a few years since I have. I had a lot of trouble with some churches. I was scheduled to speak at some Catholic events and was stopped by the bishops because they wanted their dialogue. And it's very clear the Catholic Church in particular does not want to discuss jihad or offend Muslims. There are other churches that do. I haven't done it for a while. David, maybe you have. I'm always willing to, though. If you got a church, just let me know. I'll come and speak.
Yeah, Robert tends to write tons of books to get his information out there. I tend to make videos to get the information out there. I have to say, if the church ever woke up for 5 seconds, Islam would be cooked. Cooked. It can't stand criticism. Its arguments are stupid and easy to refute. And Historically, Islam spread through the sword. When it can't spread by the sword, it spreads through using deception in an atmosphere of ignorance. If you take away, it can't spread by the sword very well anymore because other nations are much more powerful now. So it can only spread through deception in an atmosphere of ignorance. You take away the atmosphere of ignorance, meaning you have an informed population who know how to respond to their stuff. It's done. There's nothing to fall back on. Islam has no other way to. I mean, you've got the birth rates and so on, but Islam would collapse so incredibly fast if people. I mean, keep in mind they're dealing with the avalanche of apostasy, and it's still a very small percentage of people who know anything about Islam and are sharing it. And they're already dealing with the atmosphere of the avalanche of apostasy. Imagine if they heard responses to stuff every time they bring up Islam.
And the death penalty for apostasy also discourages that. There are a lot of people who've actually in every way left Islam, but they have not announced that they've done so for fear of being killed. Seal of the Prophet says you don't mess with the Zohran. Well, we'll see. I don't want anybody to mess with the man, but I do hope he's defeated somehow. Jack Ray says, is New York City azuded now? Well, he certainly looks like it. Seal of the Prophets, Mamdani gives shout out to the Holy Land Foundation, Holy Land 5 people in one of his rap tracks. That's interesting. Holy Land Foundation was an Islamic charity, the largest Islamic charity in the United States. It was shut down some years ago when it came to light that it was funneling the charitable contributions to Hamas, and they were so cynical and deceptive. They even had a button on websites that said give to the victims of 9/11 with a picture of the Twin Towers, and you would give the money. You think it was going to victims of 9/11, it was going to Hamas.
The real victims.
Yeah, that's right. Yes. Jihad attack, Muslims hardest hit. That's the way it is in the media. Student of Life, Mr. Spencer and Dr. Dawood. Did you guys see Steven Crowder go scorched earth on Dave Smith, Candace, and Tucker over the Iran war? I did not. Did you, David?
I saw some of his response to Candace, and yep, it was actually pretty good.
Excellent.
He was blasting away.
Abu Bakr al-Puff Daddy, how events quickly transpired this past week. What is your assessment of these past 7 days? What is your opinion on the Trump-esque ceasefire? Well, Trump, I don't think Trump has any clear idea of what jihad is all about. And I don't know that he realizes that the Islamic Republic, as long as it continues to exist, will continue to work toward the death of America and Israel. I haven't seen him show any indication that he realizes that. And it looks as if he's thrown the Islamic Republic a lifeline. What do you think, David?
Yeah. The leaders of Iran are terrible garbage. We have a president who's basically always looking for a deal, right? Because he literally wrote the book, and in general, that's a good approach to be looking for deals and compromises and so on. We would kind of be of the view that there are certain groups that you just come up with a different way of dealing with them.
Yes, indeed. All right, we got Abu Bakr al-Puff Daddy. If asked by President Trump, would you advise for the U.S. government to pursue regime change in Iran? How would that work? Alliance with the son of the Shah? Well, I would be all for the U.S. making public show of support for the son of the Shah and aiding groups within Iran that are trying to overthrow the government. I'm certainly not in favor of U.S. troops going into Iran to bring about the change. The Iranian people have to do it.
It absolutely has to be the Iranian people. You can't be, even though the majority of Iranians would be very appreciative of the United States or Israel going in there and overthrowing their government. You don't want to be the government that was installed by the United States or Israel over there, because things will eventually go wrong, as they always do in governments and so on. And it will be, this is because you are installed by the Zionists or you are installed by the Americans or something like that. So yeah, it has to ultimately be them. With that said, if I were in charge, I'd be doing anything I could to help that happen.
Oh yeah. short of military action.
Oh, yeah. Let me, just because this keeps coming. I mean, it's so dumb, Robert, but it keeps coming up. Literally everything I say about Iran, I get. But David, the regime change didn't work in Afghanistan, so why would it work in Iran? As if these places are remotely alike. They're not. People think, hey, everything over there. I mean, keep in mind, we're a country that's literally founded on the idea of a regime change, right? Guess what? If you look around the world at any well-functioning government, chances are at one point it was a regime change from something else. So you should at least have it in your minds that sometimes regime changes can be good and helpful. That's especially the case when you're dealing with a government that's like kind of as evil as possible. It's like, okay, you're already at the bottom. You can only go up or get something that's just as bad or something like that. But people still don't understand. Afghanistan, 99% of the population want Sharia. Even those who oppose the Taliban, it's, oh, you're not doing Sharia right, but we still want Sharia. Okay, if you have a country where 99% of people want Sharia and their only objection to other groups is that they're doing Sharia wrong, they've got the right Sharia over here, is that a place where the United States is going to be able to prop up a government forever?
Nope.
No, that is not. You are doomed to failure. You are doomed to fail in that situation. You could keep it up for a while, but you are doomed to fail. So so you have a 99.7% Muslim population in Afghanistan, and you have 99% of the population want Sharia as the law of the land. Yes, your regime change, United States of America, is doomed to eventually fail. Is that the situation in Iran, which has a 40% Muslim population and where almost 90% want a Western-style democracy? No, you're dealing with completely different groups of people who want completely different things. If you have some general principle against regime changes or something like that, be happy to hear it. But my goodness, stop saying, well, it didn't work in Afghanistan. Okay, it didn't work in Afghanistan, so why did it work in the United States? If that's your theory, it's just, oh, it didn't work there, therefore it never works. That's stupid. Anyway,
that's right.
A bunch of dumb people.
Yep. All right, Student of Life says, Mr. Spencer, are you a Tar Heel? Well, not a native, but I did attend the University of North Carolina at Chapel Hill, got a BA and an MA from there, first studied Islam there, well, all right, what's happening, buddy?
Would have been funny if you studied Islam and converted.
There were some guys there that were trying very hard to work that. They were working so hard to get me to convert. It was a Muslim group on campus. I looked them up now and again. One of them is working in Herndon, Virginia for some Islamic group. You know, that's a big Islamic area. And it'd be interesting to debate him again. We used to have these public discussions in the pit, the public area on campus there. But anyway,
hey, you should start saying that. Robert, you won't face me. What are you talking about? I started in the pit. I began my debate career in the pit. You think I'm scared of this?
It's true. The pit actually is the site of a jihad attack. An Iranian Muslim named Mohammad Reza Tahrir-Azar. This was long after I left there. It was in 2006. He rented an SUV and he drove down into the pit, which is quite a feat if you look at it, because it steps down into this sunken area. And so that must have been pretty bumpy for him to drive the SUV down into that. But then he started trying to run students down. He injured 9 students. Wrote a series of letters to the Daily Tar Heel, the student paper, explaining with copious quotes from the Quran, all about why he did it, how he read the Quran, and it showed him that he had to wage war against unbelievers. Those letters were incredibly revealing of the jihadi mindset and jihadi motivations, and so of course they took them down. You can't get them anymore. If I had known they were going to do that, I would have saved them. But anyway, a lot of lost things. There's a lost things theme today also, David. My first paper on Islam and Tahrir-Azar's letters. Anyway, sorrow and loss, it's part of life, ladies and gentlemen. Jack Ray, they draw one giant Diddy line around New York and lie that the safe side is inside the circle? Zut. Ooh, okay.
It's one way to do it.
One way to do it. All right, we got Liam Scott says Mamdani is a 12er cultist like Ayatollahs. Yes, he is. Seth's, that real ex-spy in the chat, says Zohan, it's Zohran really, must win general election against Adams.
They're making a joke about this. There was that movie, Don't Mess with the Zohan. And his name just adds an R. His name just adds an R, so they're messing with him about that. But yeah, there is. He does. Here's the thing: people are saying, because as soon as he won the primary, people were asking. People who are from other places were asking, "Does this mean he's going to win?" And then other people were saying, "Yes, 100%, because whoever wins the Democratic nomination is going to win." With that said, I wouldn't say it's 100%. I would think it's more like 85 to 90%, because I think there are enough Democrats in the rest of the country going, we know this is going to end in disaster, and we know we will be destroyed if they put our policies into effect in New York and it destroys the city. And this will turn everyone away from everything we want to do. So we have to shut this. It's what they did with Bernie Sanders. Bernie Sanders
running as an independent.
That's what will happen. Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Well, we'll see.
And I think Cuomo is going to run as an independent, and any one of them
dropped out. He dropped out today.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Matter of fact, other people were saying, "Hey, you need to drop out. There needs to just be one. Everyone needs to drop out except for one independent candidate to give him the best chance." But it's like with Bernie Sanders, when Bernie Sanders was going to win the nomination, and then they just totally sabotaged him. Like his own party sabotaged him because they were like, "We cannot have a freaking socialist be the total face of our party." So they torpedoed him because they understood you can't do it. This would be too costly. We have to ease into this stuff. You can't just go straight to it, and then everyone sees how terrible it is. I think they might pull something like that where they make sure someone else wins.
Well, I'd actually be in favor of that. Usually, I think that kind of chicanery against the electorate, I'm not in favor of. But in this case, it's a crisis.
I've kind of mixed feelings. There's that part of me that's like, go ahead and get this guy. Go ahead and get the socialist who has all these fantasies of I'm just gonna tax the rich. And they're gonna stay here, and they're just gonna keep giving us piles of money to give everyone free stuff. And the level of delusion. Sometimes you have to you have enough people in the country who still believe that works. To where you
but there's already abundant precedent. There's already all kinds of examples of how it doesn't work.
It has to be huge. It has to be so dramatic that you're looking at that going, whoa, my goodness, they just destroyed New York City with this idea. Should we put this in place in the rest of the country? Because you're right, it's been pointed out over and over again when it's like, and keep in mind, guys, I've been poor most of my life. I'm not poor right now. For most of my life, I've been poor. So I've always like poverty level. West Virginia trailer park poverty level and stuff. So this isn't about loyalty to the wealthy or something like that. It's about being realistic of how the world works and so on. Like back when it was the rich need to pay their fair share, and that's why we need free college and free this and free that and free this. And there was that famous news clip where you had this young girl who was a student at some California university, and she's going, and they need to pay their fair share, and they need to pay off all this and that. And the guy said, we've actually done the math, and you could tax all the richest people 100% of everything they have. It would not pay for one of the things that you are suggesting. Mm-hmm. You could tax them everything they have and own, and it would not be enough to pay for what you want it to pay for. How do you respond to that? She goes, well, that's why they need to pay for their fair share. And she just kept saying it over and over again, like she's programmed to just keep spouting the same thing. But
programmed
so anyway,
it's a good word.
Yeah, the idea, guys, the stuff that these guys want to pay for, it doesn't work. It is. There's no conceivable way it works, and that's sometimes you just have to let an entire city fall apart to see it.
I like New York. I'm kind of sorry to see it looming on the edge of the precipice. But anyway,
I lived there a bit after you, and I'm like, what do you want to slow cook the entire city or have some dramatic spectacle out of it? I'm like
okay.
50-50.
Yeah, well, it'll make a good movie. All right, the Sentinel says, my father predicted this. Muslims would run for public offices in Western-run democracies. They would then outbreed the local population and have the Muslim politician in a position of power. But you don't even need the outbreeding. You may be right about all this, but because Islam is inherently political, Muslims seek political power even when they're a small minority. This is what we're seeing in New York. Nobody is paying any attention to this phenomenon because it's Islamophobic. And yet we're seeing it all over Europe, all over the UK, and now in New York. Okay, Dileep Winston says, my first super chat to J-Dubs. Thank you, Dileep. GBY, what does that mean?
God bless you.
Oh, thank you, of course. Bob the Poet, missed today's. It'll still play. I hope it'll play at the beginning. Just jumped off from GL. What's GL?
God Logic, probably.
Gotcha. Oh, hi, D-Dubs. Who's D-Dubs?
Don't know.
N2, stay away. All stay away from Islam. Seek Christ. Good advice. Okay. Ari Wasserman says, some dude on X said Robert was a Jew. Well, that's like 10 times a day they say that. Maybe he's a moron. No, I don't know if I'm a moron. But anyway. Oh, no, I know. They're saying the other guy is. But I think he's probably a viewer who thinks the headphones are Princess Leia payout. Yes. Yes, with silver. Streaks of silver. What about when I had the blue ones, though? Some Bible Summary says, thanks, guys. Keep the jihadis on their heels with the truth. RS, kudos on the doom. Thank you. John 3:16, contrast, and way to dominate Dave Smith debating for Jesus. Thank you. That was a lot of fun. And if you haven't caught the 5-hour discussion we had about it, be sure to catch that. McDonald's Muta says, another day, another DW in a blue shirt.
Hey, you know what's funny? I realized like a couple weeks ago when I did laundry and I happened to fold them all at the same time, but I have 3 shirts that are just completely different brands that are exactly the same color. And I was like, and it's funny because I think this is the one I've had, I don't know, for probably 15 years. Like if you go back to my videos from 15 years ago, you'll see me in this exact shirt and so on. But over time, I have also purchased shirts that are the exact same color. And it would be funny if wouldn't it be interesting if you bought all shirts that are all the same color and that's all you ever wore, but you made it known. You're like, look, here's my closet. Here are all my shirts and they're all the same color. And that way people wouldn't think that you're just a loser who always wears the same shirt.
Like Charlie Brown.
Yeah.
Yep. Abu Bakr al-Pafdadi says, what is the psychology of folks like Jonathan Brown or Ibrahim Hooper or Grover Norquist, you mean? Why would they convert to Islam? What is their motivation? I haven't heard Grover converted. He's certainly very pro-Islamic, but I don't know that he's converted. He may have. He's married to a Muslim, and of course that does indicate that he likely has, but he hasn't spoken about it publicly that I know of. The other two, what do you think, David?
It usually happens. They convert when they're young. It's usually like 16, 17, 18 or something like this. They buy into the Dawa script. So there are Dawa guys who are, hey, you need to convert. Oh my goodness, it's a perfect preservation of the Quran. It's just pure monotheism and stuff. And these guys convert. And then later on they find out, but by that time they're too invested in the system. So they're kind of stuck in it. And it's their entire lives and careers, and it's their families now. And yep. Hard to get out.
Yeah, there is actually a large percentage. I haven't seen this in years, but I saw a survey at one point. Maybe David, you have more on this. That a high percentage of converts to Islam end up leaving in the first year because they haven't been told by the Dawa guys about. Well, you can't listen to music, you can't do this and that. They get a sugar-coated version.
Yeah, matter of fact, I first saw that in a Muslim booklet. It was a Muslim booklet warning other Muslims that they need to take steps in their, because they're focused on dawah and they're focused on getting these converts. And the statistic back then was around 60% of converts, and this is probably like 2008, 2000, something like, it was a long time ago. But the statistic back then was around 60% of people who convert to Islam leave Islam within 2 years. And so they're basically saying, hey guys, we're making more ex-Muslims in our dawah. That's what we're doing. We're making more ex-Muslims than we're making Muslims, right? But yeah, more recently, this was on Abdullah Samir's channel, but he was giving more recent stuff where it was around 70%. It was around 70% of converts to Islam leave within the first couple of years. And so, yeah, this is this case, whereas they were explaining it in terms of the Muslim community is not there. It's basically, they're not there to help you unless you're some important influencer like Andrew Tate. And so they'll just, oh, yeah, we don't care. Well, you're a single mom. Yeah, get out of here. We don't care. We're not here to help you, and so on. But yeah, so it's like, that's why there's this attempt. Like if a woman converts to Islam, there's a strong attempt that we need to get her married as quickly as possible. We need to get her pregnant as quickly as possible. We need her surrounded. We need her to have an entire Muslim family so that by the time she realizes this is complete nonsense and that everything we told her was a lie to get her to convert, she'll be so embedded in the system that it's going to be too hard and painful to actually get out of it.
Oh,
and
my goodness.
Yep.
All right. Ari Wasserman says, St. John, Muhammad wrote ridiculous books. Muhammad, what? Kill him. He lies. I am unlettered. Okay. Yashak says, on Christians accommodating Muslims, what's your opinions on Jay Dyer versus Catholics on Muslims worshiping God and the debate on it on Friday on CanB? I know nothing. You could take it away, David.
I know exactly what's going on here. So this is Jay Dyer, who's Orthodox. He's Eastern Orthodox. And then you have Catholics led by Cameron Bertuzzi in this case. And Cameron Bertuzzi has argued that Muslims and Christians worship the same God. That's
the Roman Catholic Church position.
Whereas Jay Dyer is saying, no, they don't worship the same God. And then, so Cameron posted something a couple days ago, and then looks like they're going to actually debate it on Friday. I look at it as it kind of depends what you mean. Like if you, like, I can understand, like, so, okay, so I know you, Robert. We've known each other for years. Other people don't know you. Other people don't know you. So imagine someone just, they've read a couple of your tweets or something like that, and that's all they know about you. We could be in a situation where I know you significantly better than that person would know you. Your wife or one of your kids would know you way better than I know you. And so different people could know you to some different extent. And a person who doesn't know you might have all sorts of false ideas. Did you know that he's in a hate group and he's been on blah, blah, blah. He's this hateful individual and stuff. Even though we'd be talking about the same person, but one person would have all sorts of false beliefs about you. We would still be talking about the same person. That's me steel manning basically the Cameron Bertuzzi's position that, hey, just because you're saying different things doesn't mean you're talking about someone different.
So it's well put. It's a good argument.
Yeah. So, and the other issue, but at the same time, it's like, if that's what you mean, when you say we're talking about the same guy. So you could say, in other words, you could say Muslims have a bunch of screwed up, messed up ideas, and they've been taught a lot of false things about God, but they're still worshiping God. Just they're pretty darn ignorant about how they're going about it, and they've been fed a bunch of false ideas. But also at the same time, it's like if someone comes up to me, he's like, "Hey, you know Robert?" I was like, "Yeah, of course I know Robert." I'm like, yeah, I know Robert. Yeah, he's 6'9". He plays for the Bulls. I'd be like, yeah, I don't think we're talking about the same Robert here. No, we are talking about the same Robert. I'd be like, I don't think we're talking about the same Robert, right? At what point do you say, no, we're talking about something different? And so in Islam, it's like, okay, if you're specifically defining your God as someone who's not a father in any sense, can have no son, not in any sense, is definitely not a Trinity. Don't say three, all these things. It's like, at what point do you say, look, your God is specifically defined as not being our God. So I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's well argued. That really it's a matter of what you mean by the same God. And if you're talking about it from one angle, then yes. Another angle, then no. So
Yeah, that's what
they've
I'd say.
both
If
got a
someone,
point.
yeah, if someone, I would definitely lean towards the not, because I would be in favor of the
Hmm.
stop confusing this and stop pretending like we're all,
Yeah.
yeah, they're good too. You give people the wrong idea of what you're saying. But if you're really asking about, say, okay, tell me what you mean. If you want to say Muslims are like trying to worship God, but they have a bunch of false ideas that are poisoning their theology and so on. Okay, I'm okay with that, but
Hmm.
it's easier to just say, okay, we're not talking about the same God anymore. I mean, following that reasoning, I could say, look, I have a bottle cap here, and suppose someone comes along and says, I worship this bottle cap. This bottle cap created the universe. I mean, are you going to say that oh, he's worshiping something that created the universe, so it's God, and he just has a weird idea about God? It's like how far you want to take that?
Indeed. And denying the Trinity, the Incarnation, the salvation in Christ, it's clearly not the same. Anyway, Flippy says, RS, what do you know about the PKK? Where I live, many PKK agents here. I was talking about Israel bombing Iran, and some Kurd eavesdropping got angry. Well, I don't know what you're asking, really. They are the Kurdish independence movement. They seem to be Marxists. They got the hammer and sickle on their flag, as far as I recall. And the Turks are fighting them. That's Erdogan's excuse for being in Syria. Although I think it is largely an excuse. He has territorial ambitions in Syria to reconstitute the Ottoman Caliphate. Flippy also says another Kurdish sexual assault cases in Japan. Victim is an 11-year-old boy this time. Children are unsafe around Kurdish, Pakistani, and Bangladeshi men, but it
Doesn't
ain't
sound like
because of their ethnicity.
doesn't sound like Flippy likes Kurds.
Yeah, but it's not because they're Kurds or Pakistani or Bangladeshi that they're raping. It's because of Islam.
I'm thinking Flippy might be a Turk.
Really? Well, it's not as if Turkey has a different Quran, so I don't know.
I'm just saying when you see complaints about Kurds, it's usually Turks.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Also, yeah. Complaints about the PKK. You're probably right. Tezbot says, "Hi R&D, research and development. Why do you think people immediately dismiss Truth of Islam and call critics racist, bigoted, etc., rather than look into it themselves? Especially as critics try to warn of dangers. God bless, because they've been told it's racist and bigoted
Hmm.
to
They've been
speak
programmed
this
with
way.
that all their lives,
Exactly.
their
Uh,
entire lives. And Robert, I shared this. I shared this years ago when my son switched to school, and this was in the Bronx, but he was going to school in Queens, and we switched him to um, a Catholic school in the Bronx that was much closer. But these kids had been basically in the same school their entire lives, and he goes in there, and it was school started, and they got to the anniversary of the 9/11 attacks, and the teacher asked who carried out the 9/11 attacks, and he said it as gently as possible. He didn't like these Muslim jihadis. He said something like radical Muslims and so on. He said the entire class, this is like sixth grade or something like that. They said the entire class turned to him and goes, "That's racist." And they all started going, "That's racist. That's racist." Like you've got a Catholic school in New York, and by sixth grade, they've already been completely programmed that to state a fact about who's behind this. And even being, again, he didn't say Muslims did it. It's the extremists. That was unacceptable and racist by then. So they're getting people while they're young to have this view. It's hard to break out of.
But David, Candace Owens said that after 9/11, she was taught in school that all Muslims were terrorists.
Yeah, I'd be interested in seeing what school that was, Robert, because it seems like the exact opposite of what everyone was taught back then. And
Exactly.
if I didn't know better, which I don't, I'd think that Candace is just making crap up again.
I believe so. All right. Thank you, SLNTSIR. And Tezbot says, think I answered my own question. Long day. Thanks, Tez. And SLNTSIR says, thoughts on Zohran Mamdani's run for New York mayor? Well, I tell you what, go back to the beginning and watch the beginning of this show, and you will see plenty of thoughts on that. And Jeff Zhervelokov, Comrade Zhervelokov says, what do you think of the U.S. recognizing the Armenian genocide? And do you think Turkey will ever come to terms with its past? Jihadis never admit wrongdoing, ever. Turkey will never admit the Armenian genocide, no matter what the U.S. or anybody else does. They never do that. They always blame somebody else at best. Oleg Cholewa. Mr. Robert, is Poland good at preventing Islamization? Yes, so far.
Pretty good so far.
You don't see it. You don't see jihad in Poland or Hungary. These places have kept the Muslim migrants out, and that means they've kept the jihadis out.
And I think it's because it's still in their memory about having to deal with the Ottoman invasions. It's still in Eastern Europe. It's still more in their minds. They're familiar with Islam as an enemy, more so than like the UK or something like that, where with the UK's interaction is always because the UK is doing something somewhere else, right? It was always England doing something somewhere else and being there. And so in England, they still look at the Muslims as the victims, whereas in places like Poland and so on, they view Muslims as the invaders who are coming to subjugate them and so on. So,
yep, excellent point.
It's fresher in their minds.
Nate P says, you two do work that is so crucial. Thank you. Thank you, Nate.
It's what we do.
Yep. Mother Hulda, cheers to both of you. Cheers, Ma. And DT says, free groceries, free housing, free Palestine. Yeah, that's Mamdani's platform right there.
I might steal that because I was thinking, hey, maybe I should just make a little video about this. What I wanted to make the little video is way back in the day. This was my biggest video of all time in terms of views. I think it had almost 4 million views eventually. So the Ground Zero Mosque video, where everyone was talking about the Ground Zero Mosque, and I was like, I live in New York. I'll just go down there and make a video. So I went down there and made a video outside of what was planned to be the Ground Zero Mosque. I just stood outside what was planned to be the Ground Zero Mosque, and I explained how Nabil, right after 9/11, I was hanging out at his house, and this was right after 9/11, and he was laughing at pictures his cousins were sending him. And Nabil was an Ahmadi, and so you're talking like the most peaceful sect of Islam that you could have. And then he shows me the pictures, and one was George W. Bush, who had become a Muslim. So they had photoshopped George W. Bush into being a Muslim, which I thought was funny. And then it was the Statue of Liberty in a burqa. And then one was, it was supposedly a postcard from 5 years in the future. So it looked like a postcard. But it said 2006 on it. This is 2001, right after the attacks. But it said 2006 on it, like it's a postcard from 5 years in the future. And all the places that have been destroyed were all replaced with mosques and so on. And it's like, so notice that was like a prediction. We've cleared the way for Islam to take over.
Yep.
And so I made that point talking about the Ground Zero Mosque. This is exactly what they're trying to do. But now here we are, almost 25 years later. And what's going on? We got the Muslim mayor. And so anyway, it's kind of a fulfillment of that. So I might go ahead and make that, but I'm going to steal this: the free groceries, free housing, free Palestine.
It's good
as far as this message.
You know, of course, the supremacist impulse has always been in Islam, and so it's not new to the 21st century. And your stories about these memes, they remind me of in the 90s. I used to go to this Afghan restaurant in Washington, D.C., and went there fairly often. And it was, I mean, I wasn't really paying attention at that point. I had studied the Quran and so on, and I was even consulting on Islam with some people privately, but you know, I wasn't doing it publicly. I didn't have any concerns about going into a place like that. It was a very Deobandi kind of place, and they had a poster on the wall of the moon landing and an astronaut standing there on the moon and a couple of Muslims without helmets or anything, just walking around on the moon. And the caption is, "Houston, we have a problem." And I thought that's classic wish fulfillment. No Muslim country has ever sent anybody to the moon, but of course they have fantasies about being there first. All right. But what do you mean username says, but what do you mean username? Oh, no, I'm sorry. Pass law so you need 4 generations to run for office. Yeah, Mamdani's been in the country 7 years, and I think the idea of a guy coming in 7 years and whining about racism after he's elected mayor of New York, or just about to be elected mayor of New York,
Yeah. I'm more concerned with what your ideas are. There are people who come from other places and they come to the United States because they've always loved the United States and wanted to come, and they get here and they love it and are willing to do anything. I'm saying that because some of the main defenders against Islam in Western nations are people saying, I came to a Western nation to get away from this stuff, and you're trying to ram it down our throats again.
True.
There's going to be no other place to go if you do not stop. So anyway, yeah, my concern is not like how long you've been here or something like that. It's more, do you have good ideas or do you have insane, stupid, evil ideas?
Yeah, it would just be, if there were such a rule that you have to have been here a certain time to run for office, it would just be designed to guard against people like Mamdani. But you're right that it would leave out other people who are worthy. So probably another way to go about it. Mother Hulda says David's clothing minimalism is greater than Mike Winger's rampant t-shirt materialism. But I still don't know how you tell the two of them apart.
Well, one is pure evil and the other is me.
Catherine, I don't know anything about Mike Winger. Catherine Kavaney says...
You'll want to keep it that way, Robert. Trust me.
Okay. It's that having been Muslim, you can still convert. I'm not sure what that refers to. Do you know what that refers to?
It's that having been Muslim, you can still convert. Don't know. We were talking about avalanche of apostasy and people leaving after within 2 years, something along those lines.
Maybe it has to do with that. In any case, apologies, Catherine, for not getting it. Okay, Miro Hero says, how can you say Muhammad did not perform miracles when a caravan robber who can't read pulled 12 wives? Well, he was in a position in the community where there was probably nobody that could refuse him anything. At least according to the stories. Ari Wasserman, Allah and Allat sound similar, so Abu Bakr obviously could tell somebody to pull down Allah's skirt and worship the same greater goddess. Okay.
Talking about the passage where Abu Bakr said, go perform oral sex on your goddess to one of the polytheists.
Ah, yes. Yeah. Well, anyway, when I see jihadis like Muhammad Hijab going crazy and foul-mouthed, I always think of those stories. Peace be upon me, says Robert, any future plan to write a book about the Greek, Assyrian, Armenian genocide during World War I committed by Ottomans? I'd love to read that book. God bless. Not a bad idea. I have 2 books that are done that are not yet out, that will be out within a year from now, and I don't know what I'm going to do now. I haven't started a new one yet, so I will think about that very seriously. And if you have any other ideas, send them on over. What book should I write next, David?
That's not a terrible idea right there.
Yeah, it's not bad. AG says, they speak of God, but know him not. Deny the Son, deny his cross, no grace, no blood, no risen King, no love within no song to sing. I think this is a song, but it is not in the Orthodox Church, so I don't know what the tune is. Their God is one, but cold and bare, no Trinity, no mercy there. There you have it. And on that happy note, ladies and gentlemen, we have reached the end of another thrilling episode of This Week in Jihad. Oh, no, we haven't. Catherine Kavaney says, RC, Allah ain't God. Poor catechists don't get it. Okay, I think I understand that the she's saying the Catholic Church is wrong to say it's all the same God. And it is certainly true that the Catholic Church does sow a lot of confusion in this way by making people think, oh, we worship the same God, then we don't need to meet the challenge of dawah or try to preach the gospel to Muslims, and this is a very dangerous ground to get onto.
Yeah, and that's the real issue there, as far as we all worship the same God. If you were to carefully explain what you mean by that and say, "Hey, I'm saying something along the lines of, yeah, you could have all sorts of incorrect factual information about a person, but you're still talking about that person. You're just wrong about tons and tons of stuff. That's what I mean." But that somehow just very rarely gets stated. It's just we all worship the same God, and it just sounds like, hey, we're all fine.
Yeah. I had that many times when I'd been invited to speak to Catholic groups, and people would say, well, we all worship the same God, as if therefore we couldn't even talk about jihad violence, which I thought is a tremendous abuse. And doesn't, I mean, there's no remote way that's rationally justified, even by the statement that the church made. But anyway, that was indeed something I encountered more than once. So anyway, Salt says, I second that idea. Third. Okay, well, I'm going to think about that very seriously. Maybe I will write that book, but we'll see. God willing, I'll write another book at all. In any case, thank you all for being here. And if there's more jihad, then we will be back. Until then, pray, hope, and don't worry.